All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, you can post them. Should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, like a phone. If you're on a larger screen, like a computer, it should be to the right of the video where you can post your questions. All right, let's scroll through here, see if we got any new questions. Let me refresh this real quick. Okay. So we will start here with Greg T. So Greg T says, "Hi Q, I have a very active lower body action, which causes me to cast the club, and my right heel is completely up just as I start the downswing. Should I try the swing with the upper body and not worry about the lower?" Well, it's going to be a good mix of both your upper body and your lower body that's making the swing. Um, Usually, it's not an overactive lower body that causes that. It's really difficult to say without actually seeing your swing. Typically, what I see with the two main causes of kind of casting the club are one, that the club face is open. So the reason why that would cause it is because casting the club and early releasing the club is a way to get the club face back to square, right? So if you're looking here, I got this club face open. I can stall my body and throw my hands, and now I'm going to be able to get that club face squared up. If I were to keep rotating through and have my hands ahead, you can see how that face would stay open. So what I want to do is I want to have that face more square. So that way, when I come into contact, I'm going to have that face more square with my hands in front. So getting the club face more closed is typically something that needs to be done. Also, starting down steep. If you start down steep, then that can also typically lead to an early release in a casting of the club, because when we're starting down steep, we got to find a way to reroute the club to be able to get the club to work down on an appropriate plane down to the ball to be able to hit a functional shot, right? I need to have a fairly neutral path of the club. So what that means is, we've all heard in to out, out to in, right? If I'm too much into out, then I'm going to tend to struggle with blocks, hooks, overdraws, and also poor contact. Chunks, thins, heel strikes, toe strikes can also be a part of that. And then if I swing over the top and my path goes to the left, right, then I'm going to struggle with pulls, slices, pull hooks, poor contact, that sort of thing. So I want to have a fairly neutral path down the ball. I want my club to be basically turning the corner right around when we get to the ball, right? So if I have the club like this, and if I were to kind of continue to rotate down, right, well, look what's going to happen. I'm going to come down very steeply on that ball, right? So what a lot of people will do when they kind of start down steep is they'll stand up out of it a little bit. And when I do that, I have to kind of cast the club and release it early to get to the ball, right? Because if I were to kind of, rotate through and have shaftling, well, my club's just not going to get to the ground. I have to release it to get it farther away from me to get it to the ground, right? So if I have shaftling, then the club head isn't as far away from me. I can stay in my posture. But if I release it, I have to move my body away from it. So moving my body away from it is a way to shallow out the club. So if I'm like this, I can go like that. Look what happens to the club. It's shallowed out. And now I have to get that club head farther away from me and release it earlier to get the club to the ball. So those are the two main typical reasons. It's you might be right that you're out of sync with your upper body and lower body, and the feels that you're talking about, that may be beneficial. Maybe feeling like your arms are kind of doing more and your lower body's doing less. But I just don't know if that's really going to help you very much, because I don't know the root cause as to what is really going on there. Now, I do offer online lessons where I can look at this stuff and diagnose and tell you, oh yeah, Greg, this is what you need to do. If that's something you're interested in, there's a link above the video where you can either join the waiting list or claim a spot. Click that, and then we can go through the online swing review program. I can take a look at your swing and diagnose exactly what's going on. Outside of that, typically when I have somebody on here that is struggling with, what you're talking about, casting the club, what I say is first thing I would do is work through the 20-minute shallowing fix, right? Because the 20-minute shallowing fix is going to cover both of those main reasons that I typically see for an early release in a cast, all right? Because the 20-minute shallowing fix gets you to where you're getting that club shallowing earlier, so that way you're actually incentivized to stay in your posture. You don't have to stand up to get it in a shallow position. We already get it into a shallow position. And then we also work on getting the club face more closed in that course as well. So that's what I would recommend doing out of the gate. So that would be just going to the instruction tab and then clicking the 20-minute shallowing fix from there. And then, working through those drills. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to automatically get you shaft lean. You can still, have the club shallow early in the swing and have the face closed and still cast it and things like that. It's not necessarily guaranteed that that's going to get it done, but a lot of times it definitely helps quite a bit. A lot of people work through that course and they're not even trying to get more lag and shaft lean and things like that. It just happens as a product of working through the course successfully. So that's what I would check out first. And then the second thing would be just working through the Tosby-Gall system, working through the system, starting with the stable fluid spine, and then working your way up. There's a lag course in there. So you start with the stable fluid spine, then you go to the power turn, then you go to the Tosby lag course, compression line, then the straight line release. So just working your way through the system will also kind of fix it. In order to kind of see the small intricacies and things in your swing that's leading to the issues, we really need to be able to get eyes on your swing to really know specifically what's going on there. Without that, what I can tell you is the 20-minute shallowing fix and the Tosby-Gall system. Both of those can be reached by clicking the instruction tab at the top. You'll see from the drop down there, you'll see the 20-minute shallowing fix, and then you'll see Tosby-Gall system from there. All right, I'm going to refill my drink here while y'all come up with more questions. I'm going to also refresh the screen here just to make sure we got the latest and greatest questions in there. So bear with me. I'm going to get a drink, but while I'm getting a drink, how about you guys come up with some more questions you might have? Be happy to answer them for you. Gotta get some caffeine. Hadn't had any today, and I realized that I had a headache, and that's probably why. All right. Not a coffee drinker, so I gotta go with the Diet Dew. All right. So RC says, I always struggled with a draw hook for many years. Recently, I can't draw my driver or irons. I even closed the face on my driver and still some big slices. Any tips? Well, the short answer would be work through that 20-minute shallowing fix, right? Work through that 20-minute shallowing fix, work through the drills. Shut down that face. One thing to keep in mind is, we may get the club face shut at address, but really it's at impact where we want that shut, right? Or where we want it to be. The first part of it would be to get the ball to hook a ton, right? So if you're struggling with slicing, right, we want to get the ball to hook. Just like if you were struggling with hooking, we'd actually want to get the ball to slice, then tone it down. So what we would do is, strengthen the grip, get that lead hand more on top, get that trail hand more under. That first drill from the 20-minute shallowing fix, it's a really great process that Clay runs you through to find what feels more like a natural strong grip. A lot of people, I love the way that Clay does it in that video because, you could just say, hey, just use a stronger grip, right? But that's not always the easiest for people, especially if you're used to a very weak grip, right? So he brings you through a process where he has you do it. So I can kind of run you through that process really quickly right now to help you kind of find a more natural feeling strong grip. So first, you just want to turn that club upside down. Just grip the club the way you normally would right now. And then you're just going to turn that club upside down like it's an axe, right? And I just want you to get the sensation of, chopping wood, right? Like this is a very powerful move, right? Have you ever seen anyone cast the club when they're chopping wood? I've never seen anyone chop wood like this. Everyone gets lag and then releases that thing right into that wood to split it, right? So that's the kind of sensation that we want. And the golf swing is similar to this, and you'll see how in just a second. So now what I'm going to do, now I'm chopping wood. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this. I'm going to almost kind of get my elbows kind of pointing more toward maybe where the target would be. I want to act like I'm chopping a tree. Like I got an axe and now I'm chopping a tree, right? Again, never seen anyone chopping a tree, cast the axe. Everyone gets that behind them and then releases that axe right into the tree, right? So that's the kind of feel that we want to have here, right? So now, very similar thing. Now I'm just going to bend over here. I'm going to get into, golf posture here. I'm just going to bend over. And now I'm doing the same thing, but down toward the ball. That is the kind of feel that we want to have, right? Almost like you're chopping a tree down at the ball. So now what I would do is get to that position. And this is all in drill number 1. I'm paraphrasing the drill number 1 of the 20-minute shallowing fix. But now I'm going to get right here. I'm doing that. Now I'm going to pause. And this is just a natural feeling right here, natural, powerful feeling. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to loosen my grip. I'm going to keep my hands in the same position. I'm just going to loosen the grip. And then I'm going to twist that face back to square, right? Now that face is square. And now I'm going to basically re-grip that club. And that is basically the grip that you should have, right? So for me, that's this right here, right? That's a neutral to strong grip, right? Is what I would call that. Probably a little bit toward the stronger side, but that's what I would call that right there. So now I'm in a position where I more naturally want to get that club face square at impact. So that's what I would do, is work through that drill number 1, get that ball hooking. And you may want to try it with an iron first. It might be easier to do with an iron than it is with the driver. So maybe get it with like a 6 or 7 iron first. Work through the course and then work through it with the driver. But that's the course that I'd recommend working through, because the way that it works is a lot of times people have a hard time shallowing out the club because of the face orientation throughout their swing, right? So if I have a weak grip and I'm bringing it up to the top here, and let's say I'm cupping my wrist at the top as well. So a weak grip generally gets the face a little bit more open. And then I bring it up to the top and now I'm cupping my lead wrist. Now it gets the face even more open. So my brain is thinking, how on earth am I going to get this club face to point anywhere in the direction of the target? Because if I have a weak grip, which gets the face open, and then I have a weak wrist angle, which is cupping my lead wrist here, now that face is really open. If I swing from the inside, well, my face is just going to be wide open. I'm going to hit everything right and right. Ball's going to start right, and it's going to slice more to the right. So intuitively, almost nobody's going to do that. So what they'll do is they'll go like this, right? And that gets the club face pointing more in the direction of the target. But the problem is that my club face is still very open to my path, right? What that means is that my face, meaning face angle, which is like the TrackMan technical term, that's the direction the club face is pointing at impact. My club path is the direction my club head is moving through impact. So you've probably heard in to out, out to in, right? If I swing in to out, right? If I imagine the ball's here, this is my target line. So if I imagine the ball's here, if my club is working from outside that stick to inside the stick through impact, that'd be an out to in, right? If my club head is working from inside the stick to outside the stick through impact, that would be in to out, right? So when I'm swinging like that, my club face is pointing in the direction of the target, but my path is working across. So when your face is open to the path of the club, that's when you're going to get the big slices, right? So that's why we want to get the face closed, so that way we can hook it. So now that I got the face closed, now I'm actually incentivized to swing this club to the right. Because if I have the face closed and I swing to the left, now my ball's going left and left. Intuitively, you're going to want to swing the club in the direction more out to the right to hit the ball in the direction of the target. So that's what you do in drill number 2. So drill number 1, you get the face closed enough to get it to hook. Doesn't matter where it starts. You just get the ball hooking. You're going to do that by finding your natural grip. There's some other things that Clay goes over in the video as well to help you. So that's drill number 1. You get those 10 hooks in a row. Now you graduate to drill number 2. Drill number 2 is just going to be getting the ball to start to the right and hook. Because if we can get the ball to start to the right and hook, we know that we're shallowing it out, right? Now Clay uses, you might. So basically, said Clay, it's been a little while since I've watched the video, so forgive me, but basically, I think Clay in drill number 2 just says in the beginning, like, now try to swing out toward first base, essentially, right? And then if the ball is not starting to the right and hooking, then he introduces an impact bag. And basically the way that would work, I don't have an impact bag in here, but we can use this box. Basically, it's kind of like an impact bag. And basically what he says is put it right behind your ball, right, along that target line, essentially. And now we got to miss that box, right? Now we got to miss that box. I'll do you one better than that. I like the box there. I think that's definitely going to help. That's going to force your path from the inside. What I don't like about it, let me bring that back in. What I don't like about it is that we can kind of stand up out of it to make it happen, right? So I can be here and I can stand up and shallow out the club by standing up. So what I actually prefer as a shallowing drill is if you're having trouble just getting the club to swing out to the right, and let's say maybe you're not having trouble with it, but you have to stand up out of it to do it. What I recommend doing is a blue brick drill. And if you're not familiar with what the blue brick is, that's the training aid that Clay invented. It's this guy right here. And that's on here. We got some holes that we can use for shallowing. There's all kinds of drills you can do on here, but what we're going to do on here is shallowing. I got a wedge in my hand here, so I'm going to put it in the wedge slot, but you can do driver, you can do 6-iron, and really you don't have to use those specific clubs. If you want to use your 7-iron, put the stick in the 6-iron setting. It's going to be pretty much the same thing. But I want you to see what happens here. Let me get it in the frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this stick in the wedge slot here. And just to kind of show you the difference, that's the wedge slot, and then here's the driver. You can see how it's much flatter, right? And it's just because the driver is just a longer club, so it's going to have a little bit of a flatter, line here, stick here. So I'm going to put that there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay a stick on the ground. I'm going to point that at the target. There is a hole that's on the front part of the brick here on this side that you would put it in. But my wall is in the way here, so I can't do that. So I'm just going to put it up against the brick. If you want to do that, that's just fine too. But that hole will kind of hold it in place. I'm just not putting it in there because my wall's in the way. So now I can do that same drill. I'm going to put this ball about a club head or so inside the stick. And in the video, the drills that come with the brick, Clay says to put it two club head widths inside. You can do that. That's fine. It does, in my experience, it does enable you to come down a little bit steep, right? Typically, if you're someone who is kind of extremely kind of coming over the top, I would actually probably recommend that you do that to start, because you might end up, hitting the stick and breaking it if you don't. But then you can graduate to getting it a little bit closer. But just for the sake of showing you here, I'm gonna put it about a club head inside there. And now I'm gonna set this up. And again, this is a little different than what Clay says on the brick drills. I don't know if he actually says a specific distance away, how far back this stick is gonna go. But where I like to put it is I like to put it to where it's kind of covering your hands as you're coming down. That's where I like to put it. But you can put it a little bit farther back as well. But if you put it, this is kind of the best part of this drill, or part of the best part of this drill, is that if it covers your hands, then it's going to prevent you from, to a certain extent, coming up out of your posture to shallow out the club. So if you look here, if I have it there and I stand up out of it, my hands are going to hit that, right? So I can still get the club to work underneath the stick, but my hands will hit that. I got to get my hands underneath that and the club underneath that to be able to shallow it out and also stay in my posture to a certain extent. All right, so that's why I like setting it up that way. So like I said, I get your 10 hooks in a row in drill number 1, get the natural grip. Then you go to drill number 2. And like I said, you don't have to use this. You can just try to swing out to the right. If you have an impact bag or like an old empty box, basically just anything that you can put in the way of the path of the club to prevent it from coming over the top, that won't hurt you or the club would be ideal. Like that box, if I were to hit that box, I'm just going to destroy the box. Nothing else is going to be a problem. Or you can set this up, and this is kind of the best, in my opinion, because there's several reasons. Well, one, it gives you that visual representation of how the arc and the incline that I want to have this club coming down, right? So it gives me a good visual representation. I also like the checkpoint of getting to like lead arm parallel here. And I want to have this club either parallel to that stick or a little bit shallower to it, right? If we're like this, then I'm going to typically need to reroute the club. Typically, if my club is steeper than this stick at this lead arm parallel position, a lot of times what's going to happen is I'm going to have to kind of stand up out of it or push my hands out away from me to get that club to shallow out. And that's not ideal, right? So if we can get here, now I'm incentivized to kind of stay in my posture and rotate through. So that's a big reason why I like this. So definitely check it out if you're interested in picking up one of these. If you don't have one, if you go to the resources tab, so if you look at kind of the top of the screen there, you should see like a resources tab. If you're on the mobile app, you can click that. It's called a hamburger icon. It's like 3 horizontal lines. That'll expand the menu, and you can find the resources tab there. If you go to that resources page, it lists all the stuff that we recommend: training aids, launch monitors, books, all kinds of cool stuff. So you want to see the stuff that Clay thinks is the best stuff, and I tend to agree with all of it. That's why I recommend going. And yeah, so then you work through that drill number 2 to get the ball starting to the right and hooking. Well, now, once we've done that, now we're ready to move on to drill number 3, which is where we dial it in, right? So keep in mind, drill number 1, drill number 2, these aren't supposed to be beautiful, gorgeous golf shots. Drill number 1, they should be hooks, right? And a lot of you who are coming down steep to begin with are going to be hitting left and left hooks, meaning hooks that start left and hook more to the left. It's okay. That's what we want to be doing at that stage, right? It sets you up for the next stage. The next stage is going to be starting to the right and hooking. Now, it's better than the left and left hooks, but it's still going to be a hook, which is not ideally what we want. And then you go to drill number 3, where we tone it down and we dial it in. So once you get the 10 shots in a row that start to the right, hurt to the left, then you can go on drill number 3 to dial it in. So that's what I'd recommend doing. And like I said, work through it with an iron. First, it's probably going to be a little bit easier for you. 6-7 iron, something like that. And you can do that with the brick as well. And then you can graduate to the driver after that. All right, let's keep going here. So we got a question from Don. Says, hey, Q, haven't been here for a while because I've been working on stuff. No worries. All right, so one of the things I need clarification on is release. Clay in the course talks about release as 45 degrees in front of the ball. What is release? Is that after your hands have snapped through? Because if you don't do that till 45 degrees past the ball, then how would the ball get full energy of the release if it's not happening till after impact? All right, great question, Dom. So this is always very confusing, and it's no fault of your own. It's really just because that release term is kind of like a buzzword, and you might hear some other instructor say release, and it means something different than what Clay or myself would be saying. So what we would define as the release of the club is when the club is splitting the forearms, right? So right there, right? So you can see that club is splitting my forearms at that point. So basically it'd be not released, not released, not released, not released, released, now after the release, right? Now that point of the release, when the club is splitting the forearms there, when when we analyzed, or when Clay went in and analyzed, high level golfers, we actually did a case study where Clay, myself, and other instructors looked at all the major winners from the last 20 plus years, plus like all time greats, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, all those guys as well. We also looked at Annika, high level ladies golfers. It's a lot of it's really the same, but really what we noticed is that release happened in a range. There was a range of what we would call acceptability, right? And that range was about 27 degrees to 55 degrees, with the average being about 40, 41 degrees. That was the average. So there are some guys that were like on the low end. So I'd be like a Martin Keimer, kind of releases the club a little bit earlier than his peers. Louis Oosthuizen, another one, releases the club a little bit earlier than his peers. And then you look at guys that release it a lot later. This would be like a Dustin Johnson. And then everybody's like somewhere in between, right? I would have to ask Clay this, but I think that, when Clay came up with that 45-degree number, there's probably several reasons for it. So one is the eyeball test, right? If I'm just looking at it, it looks like about 45 degrees, right? And then the other reason is probably because 45 degrees is a number that is much easier to conceptualize, right? You can visualize that much more easily, right? If you tell somebody a 32-degree angle, that's not the easiest to conceptualize, right? I know what I would do. I would think, well, that's a little less than a 45-degree angle. I know what a 45-degree angle looks like, right? So it doesn't have to be exactly that 45 degrees. You don't have to be too detailed like that. If you're in that range of 27 to 45, or 27 to 55, excuse me, you're going to be in a good spot. And just to add a little bit more than that, not to belabor the point too much, if you're on the lower end of club head speed, I actually like to see you a little bit more on the lower end of that. So if you are upper 20s to 30s, I think most recreational golfers are going to be really good in that spot. If you're a high club head speed player, you can definitely, obviously, Martin Keimer is not super slow. Actually, I just had a student the other day sent me, I haven't really looked at his swing too much, but forgive me if I'm mispronouncing his name, but I believe it's pronounced Ludwig Oberg. He actually has a little bit of an early release. Now, this is just one video. He may have been trying to hit a high shot or something like that, and he was releasing a little bit earlier. But he was releasing it around that like 27, 28 degree range, and he's got a good amount of club head speed. I've watched golf when he's been playing, and they'll show the ball speed number on the street sometime, and I believe I've seen him 180 plus ball speed, which means if you're getting 180 plus ball speed, that means that you're 120 plus club head speed, which I would consider that's a high club head speed, right? Most recreational golfers aren't, swinging that fast. So he's swinging, that fast, and hitting his irons that way. And there are some tour players that have a larger discrepancy between their driver swing speed and their iron swing speed. So his iron swing speed may not be as comparable to his driver swing speed. He might crank up the driver a little bit to get it out there a little bit farther. But I'm just saying, like, even if you are a high club head speed player, it's okay to have a little bit of an earlier release. You're just going to hit the ball a little bit higher. As long as we have the hands ahead some amount at impact, we're going to be good. So at Top Speed Golf, like I said, when we're talking about the release, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about that release is happening when the club is splitting the forearms. And ideally, that would happen somewhere in that range of 27 to 55 degrees out in front. And like I said, lower end is probably going to be better for most golfers. And because if we're on the higher end of that, let's say that you are a golfer that swings 85 miles an hour with your driver, and you're releasing the club, 50 degrees out in front. Well, odds are you're probably going to have too much shaft lean at impact for your ball flight to be very functional, which means you're probably going to have to land a lot of shots short and run it up on to the green as opposed to landing it on the green and holding the green. So that's why I tend to say, I don't mind seeing golfers be on the low end of that release, because that allows them to be able to have a more functional, more playable ball flight a little bit higher. So I would say if you don't want to hit the ball lower, then you shouldn't really worry about trying to get a lot more shaft lean, because it's just going to do the opposite for you, right? If you're trying to hit the ball higher, what I would recommend doing is work on your club head speed, right? Get your club head speed up, work on something like the 20-minute distance fix, get your club head speed up, get to a point to where you're actually hitting the ball too high, right? Because you're giving the ball so much energy. And if you're launching the ball at the same angle and giving it more energy, it's going to continue to climb in the air, and you're going to have a higher ball flight, higher and farther. So you're going to get two things there. But now you're in a place to where, hey, I actually need a little bit more shaft lean now, because it might be getting so high that it's not that playable. So that's basically the way that I would work through it. But that's what we're talking about when we say the release. Now, for the rest of your question, talking about like when, the release is actually starting. When we look at the best players, it's typically starting at lead arm parallel. So we're not waiting to release it until here, right? That's when the club is released, but it's releasing all the way down to the ball and after the ball, right? And typically that release starts around that lead arm parallel position in the backswing. So typically what you're going to see is we're going to go up to the top, right? We're hinging the club up, right? And I start the downswing. Now I'm creating some lag. Typically the maximum amount of lag I'm going to generate is going to be around that lead arm parallel position, or sometimes a little bit later with some players. And when we're looking at that, really what we're looking at is the angle between the lead arm and the shaft. When is that angle getting the smallest? Well, that's typically getting the smallest at that lead arm parallel position, or sometimes a little bit later. And that's what we refer to as the max lag position. Once you've met that max lag position, that lead arm parallel position there, that's when the release starts. So once you hit the max, everything after that is releasing the club, right? Once you hit that max lag. So now I've reached my max lag position, and now I'm releasing the club, right? So now you can see this here, this angle, we can call it like 60 degrees. Now I've gone here. Now look at the angle. Now it's about 90 degrees. Now I get to here. Now it's more than 90 degrees. Now I get to the ball, and now I have some shaft lean here. My hand's ahead, right? And then I release it here out in front, roughly about 45 degrees in a range of 27 to 55, and you're in good shape. So the top speed golf system is all predicated on doing this. So if this is something that you're struggling with and you want to work on, I would just recommend working through the top speed golf system. Start in the stable fluid spine, go to the power turn course. Now, you might be thinking, well, those aren't really related to the lag and the release. They're related for sure, because the direction your body is in is definitely going to make a big difference with that. So work through the stable fluid spine, work through the power turn course. Typically, if you're not getting a good turn, you're going to rush the swing, and that's going to tend to lead to casting, right? So we want to make sure that we get a good full turn, so that way we will more intuitively want to create lag and release out in front. And then lag is the third course, so that's creating that angle as we're coming down. And then we have the compression line, which is the line that goes from our lead ankle, lead hip, and lead shoulder. You want to kind of like imagine a line right there. At impact, we measure that line, and we want to see that in a straight line. And we want to see that, for a driver, I like it to be a little bit angled away. For an iron, I like it to be pretty close to vertical. Because if we get too angled away with that, we're going to tend to hit the ground a little bit too much behind the ball. So we want to get to where we're a little bit more vertical with that. And then the last piece is the straight line release. So to get to those courses, to get to the top speed golf system, just click the instruction tab at the top of the screen, and then you can click the top speed golf system from there. All right, so Greg T says, thanks for answering my question. Follow-up question, is lower body action in the downswing a shift to the left and then rotation, or do you start the swing with just rotation, turning in a barrel? Which course covers this? So there isn't really a course on the website that covers rotation necessarily. The compression line a little bit, because if the hips get really bumped out, then we're not going to really be rotating. But to answer your question, it's really both. Both are happening. So basically, you're actually going to be shifting to your lead side before you start rotating. You're actually going to be completing your rotation of the backswing as you are getting a lateral shift to your lead side. So if you imagine drawing a vertical or a line, not necessarily a vertical, but basically drawing a line right on the outside of my hip here, right? I'll use a chair to kind of illustrate this. Because this is a chair or a drill that I often prescribe if this is an issue in somebody's swing. So let me get these alignments out of the way. So basically, I'm going to get in my setup here, and imagine I got this chair just touching my hip address. So when you start the backswing, you will have a little bit of shift to your right to get pressure in your trail foot to start the swing. That's how we want to start the swing. Generally, what we want to do is we want to start the backswing and the downswing from the ground up. So in order to do that, I have to start with a pressure shift to my trail side, right? So pressure shift to my trail side. Now I'm loading up, loading up, loading up, loading up. So I'm keeping my hip kind of on this. I don't want to keep moving into it. I'm going to move into it to start, just to get the pressure in the trail foot. And then I'm just going to be kind of lightly touching it as I continue my backswing. Then right around in this area, you're actually going to start to push away from it as you complete your turn. And generally, you're going to create a 1 or 2 inch gap between your hip and that line or the chair here, right? So now I'm moving pressure. Remember what I said earlier. The downswing starts with pressure, right? We want to get started from the ground up. So in order to do that, we have to start from the feet, getting pressure in the feet, and then that's what starts everything. So in order to do that, I have to start moving pressure toward my lead foot as I'm getting up to the top. So that way when I start my downswing, I have pressure moving in that direction. So I'm going to be there, and then now I'm here where I'm getting pressure in that lead foot, and now I'm going to start rotating in the downswing. Now we don't have a specific course on the website that goes over hips and stuff like that. And part of that reason is because in my experience, hip rotation is not really a great thing to like focus on for most people. Now there could be some instances where it is, but for most people it's really not. I haven't really prescribed a lot of hip rotation drills to people because it's usually just not something that we really need to do. I'll go over one instance. Let's say that somebody is really not using their lower body at all, and they're just swinging the club through, and they're swinging the club way too much from the inside. Well, in that situation, they need to rotate their hips, right, to kind of neutralize that. The thing is, most people don't struggle with that problem, right? Most people actually struggle with the opposite. They struggle with the club coming down too steep. And now if you're someone who comes down steep and you just focus on rotating your hips, well, that's just going to make the club come down even more steeply. And you might have heard some instruction out there about how, if we just get the body opening up, then the club will lay down. And there are forces that will act on the club that with the rotation of your body, it will make the club lay down. But in my experience, most people are going to override that, right? So most people who are coming down steep to begin with aren't letting the arms, they're not letting the club lay down. They're overriding that and going like this. And they just need to learn to get the club to work down. So working through the blue brick shallowing drill, like I showed earlier, that's fantastic. That's what I would recommend doing. And, the ball doesn't really care how much you're rotating your hips. It just doesn't care. What it cares about is how the club is being presented to it. So that's what I would recommend focusing on, is that. Now, there are videos on the website where Clay talks about more detail about the hips and things like that. those are going to be all vault videos. Now, we do have a search engine on the website that works pretty well. So if you're on the desktop version of the website, not the mobile version, like not on your phone, but if you're just on like a normal computer, laptop or whatever, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a search box. Just search hips, and you will find lots and lots of videos where Clay has talked about the hips. So if that's something you're adamant about and you're thinking like, this is my problem, this is what I need to go work on, go work, go check out those videos that I just mentioned. Do a search. If you're on the mobile app, if you click that hamburger icon, which is that icon in the upper right hand corner that's like 3 horizontal lines, if you select that, that will expand a menu. Scroll down to the bottom of the menu and you'll find the search bar there. You can search hips there and it works the same. But you'll see lots and lots, probably pages and pages of videos with hips. Actually, let me see if I can do this. I'll just send you the link here. All right, so bear with me here. So I'm going to search hips. Yeah, so let's see here. How many pages did I get? It doesn't tell me how many pages, but all right, so boom. So now I just did a search of the hips, and I'm going to put the page that displayed the search results in the chat. So if you click that link in the chat, that will bring you to the page where you can find lots and lots of drills on it. It looks like I even have a before and after video with a student that I worked with clearing the hips. So for him, that before and after video that you may find, it's a second video on the results, SA020. So I had a student that was doing this. Remember what I was talking about with the compression line? We want that lead ankle, lead hip, lead shoulder. We want that to be in a straight line. Well, he was going like this, right? So everything was kind of getting jammed up, and then he was kind of hitting behind the ball, and he was also getting the face too close, because when your upper body is hanging back too much because you're bumping the hips, you're going to tend to get that face too closed, right? And you're going to tend to hook it, right? And not to mention, he wasn't rotating, and he was getting the club too far behind him, and then the face was getting too close. So he was hitting a lot of hooks. So basically, I had him do a drill where he put an alignment stick through his belt loops, and he needed to really feel, because basically what was happening is his hip was kind of tilting up like that. So basically what I wanted him to do was keep that lead hip low, really feel like it's low, and then when he pushes into the ground, right, that's, if he keeps that lead hip low, then that will move that hip back and more out of the way. And now we were actually trying to get the feel of his hip bumping in, right? So if I keep it really low like that, look, my hip is bumped in, right? It's an exaggeration, but it helped him to be able to rotate through the ball a lot better and get there. So check out that before and after video, Greg, because if that's what you're doing, then that drill that I went through in there might be a great drill for you to do. That's actually probably one of my favorite drills for that specific problem. So check that out. Check out that SA020. Anybody who wants to work on getting the hips to open up, because typically that's the problem, is people extend the hips forward and bump the hips forward. So they're like this. So that drill won't work. You won't be able to do that drill successfully if you do that. We have to feel like that lead hip goes down and around, and that's going to help you to open up better. But if you're someone who's doing this and you're already coming down steep, you have to get that club shallowing out first, because if you're already coming down steep and then you rotate more, you're just going to come down more steeply, right? So we got to make sure that club is coming down in a good spot before you can really work on that hip rotation. But like I said, a lot of times the way that people move their hips in the downswing is a reaction to what their club is doing at the top, right? So if you're coming down steep, or the club is working in a place that's going to come down steep, you're going to tend to stall the hips, not rotate the hips, and get into a poor position. All right. Let's keep going here. So RC says, thanks, great video you emailed today. Recommend that to everyone. I didn't see the video that went out today. But glad you enjoyed it. Hopefully we're sending out good videos all the time. Appreciate the feedback, RC. All right, so Don says, okay, so that was a great explanation. Appreciate that, Don. It says, I've always wondered, where does the release begin? Yeah, I figured that based on your question. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that because it's happening very slowly. I didn't realize it for a long time because in the very beginning of that release, it's happening so slowly you don't realize that that's what's happening. And I didn't realize that until I just analyzed a ton of like high level professional golfer swings, and I just went frame by frame, like a high frame rate video where it's like they're just moving like an inch, every frame. It wasn't until then until I could see it's like, whoa, they're actually starting to release the club from right about there. So yeah, that's when that release starts. So yeah, you're exactly right. If you just hold it, yeah, you're not gonna be able to have much speed, right? You want to create that lag, then you want to release that lag. It's like a whip, right? If I want to have a nice sharp whip, right, I gotta create lag and then I gotta release it. So it's the same thing in the golf swing. If we want to have some good speed, we want to create that lag and then we want to release it. Right, we got 15 minutes or so here. All right, we got another question from Don. How do we get that straight compression line while keeping our upper body at impact behind the ball that clay covers in the early part of the course? So what's happening is that your hips are going to be rotating a little bit, and then your hips are going to be wider, right, when they're straight on, and they're going to be narrower when they're more open, when you're looking for face on. So if you look here, I can have a spine angle that's more angled away, but you can see how this is a straight line, right? So that's how that's happening. So I'm here, I'm shifting forward, and you can see here at impact, my body's opening up a little bit, my spine is angled away here, and I have a nice straight line here, my lead ankle, lead hip, lead shoulder. So that's how that's happening. It's not from hanging back. So a lot of people, and not to mention, this is not good on your back to do this. Where I see a lot of people, they're trying to create that more angled away position by hanging back and doing this, right? And then just everything's kind of like jammed up and squared up, right? So what we want to do is we want to shift to the lead side, and then as the body kind of opens up a little bit and we get more angled away with the spine, because the middle of my hips has shifted forward, right? But because my hips have opened a little bit, that's going to make them narrower. So if I was like this, no hip shift or no opening of the hips at all, then that's going to be bumped out, right? But if I now open it, right, well now that's in a straight line. So that video that I was just talking about with that student before and after, that's basically what he was doing. Is he was bumping it. He got that spine angle good, but the compression line was way off because he was just kind of hanging back, and he was letting that left hip go up. I would try to feel like it stays down and around, and that's going to allow you to get angled away, but also allow you to have that nice straight line there. So that drill where I had to put the alignment stick through the belt loop, and then I had him, have like a water ball or a toilet paper roll, just something light that he can hit. I had him put it like on top of like a, I demonstrated, I have like this little trash can in my office here. So I had this, and then I had like, basically what you would want is you'd want it to be whatever it is, you want it to be about a hand width below this. So I had like a roll of paper towels. And then what I would do is I would just hit that roll of paper towels. And if I came through and I went above the paper towels and I'm bumping my hip upward, and then I'm not going to get what I'm looking. I'm not really going to get much rotation. So if I get here, well, now look, now I'm getting that rotation, right? So that's check out that drill. I demonstrate the drill in that video. If you want to go check it out, you can see the difference that it made for that student that I was working with. All right, we got about 10 minutes left here. If anybody has any more questions, if not, no big deal. Let's see here. I'm trying to see if there's any other. This is one I like too. That G231. It's a very similar drill, but it's not. It's just about getting the hips open. It's not as much about that lead hip more down around. So if your lead hip just is not a popping up thing, it's just a, so for example, let's say you're coming into contact and you're just like this, right? Everything's kind of squared up. And from face on, it would kind of look like this. So I'm not bumping anything. I'm just like this, and I'm swinging too much from the inside. Well, in that situation, I would work on that drill. Again, alignment stick through the belt loops. And basically you would use something like, this is the swing plate, or you can use the blue brick. But this is the swing plate here. And basically what I would do is I'd have it set up like this. So imagine this is through my belt loops, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate my hips where I want to get them rotated. And then I'm just going to situate this. Boom. So if I want to be like that at impact, then I know I want to come in. I want to get this to hit that before I hit the ball, right? So it's giving me instant feedback on what I'm doing. What a lot of people do to try to change things in their swing, and I understand why people do this. This is what I did when I was younger, because that's how I thought that how it worked. It wasn't until I got into coaching that I really kind of learned how to change this stuff and how to really do it. But what a lot of people do is they'll just go to the range and they'll try to open their hips, right? They'll go and they're just trying to open up the hips, and maybe they'll hit some great golf shots, and then they feel like, oh, I must have got my hips open, right? Because I was hitting some great shots. Well, if you were to look at it on video, most people, especially, and this mainly applies to people that have been playing golf for a long time. So I would imagine that most members of Top Speed Golf or avid golfers have been playing golf for a long time. And when you're doing that, when it's very difficult to change things in your swing at the point when things are moving the fastest, and that is that impact, right? So a lot of times we can't just feel like we're doing something or try to do something, because it's really not going to be much different. If you really want to actually change something, you need to set up feedback mechanisms. So that's why a lot of my drills are built around, what's called constraints-led coaching. So basically what that means is, doing stuff like the blue brick drill. Like this is, if I put this stick here, right, and I got the ball here, and I got to swing underneath this stick, that's a constraint, right? I'm getting instant feedback. If I were to swing over the top, I'd be there. If I put, if I want to do that drill I was talking about, I can do it on the blue brick. I'm just going to put this in the hole that holds it up straight up and down. This is the wedge launch angle hole. But basically it holds the stick straight up and down. And again, I would get to where, okay, I'm 45 degrees there. So now I have a constraint. I got to hit the ball and get that and get to where I'm hitting this. I know if I hit this before I hit the ball, I know that my hips have gotten open, right? So that's the way you typically want to approach things. Most people, I haven't really, in my experience, the only people that I've ever seen that can just do something like for example, let's say I had somebody who was kind of coming into contact like this. And I said, no, you don't want to do it that way. You want to kind of go like this, open up, stay in your posture. And then they're just they're like, okay, yeah. And they just do it. There's usually two types of people that can do that. One would be young people. When I say young people, I mean like high school, maybe college and younger, right? So young people, and that's just because they probably haven't been playing golf for a really long time, and they haven't developed like a really strong motor pattern that is difficult to change, right? You've probably heard the term, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, you can, it's just more difficult, right? Because they're more, their movement patterns are more ingrained because they've just been doing it for so long, right? I've got things in my swing that I would love to change, but I just know, man, it's gonna be tough to change it. And I kind of look at it in the sense of return on investment. What kind of return on investment am I gonna get on that change, right? Will my swing look better? Yeah, I'll probably look better. Will I play much better? I'll probably play a little bit better. But how much time, blood, sweat, and tears am I gonna have to put into that to make that happen, right? It's gonna be difficult. So that's the first person is young people, and then total beginners, people who really haven't swung a club before. Um, they may be able to, because they don't have any, you know, they don't have anything that's ingrained. Now, if they've played other sports, I think I don't know if any of you have seen, but go on YouTube. I don't know if you can maybe even find it on YouTube, but Rafi Nadal, one of the best tennis players of all time. Apparently, he is a stick. He can absolutely play some fantastic golf. I don't know if he's a scratch handicap or even better than that, but I've always heard that he's a really good golfer. If you look at his golf swing, it looks like he's a hacker, right? But he swings the golf club. Now I've actually kind of seen some analysis of his swing, and he actually gets the club coming down in a good spot. But his golf swing motion really mimics like his forehand, like the way that he hits a forehand in tennis. So he already has a very ingrained movement pattern that it would probably be very difficult to change in his golf swing, because I mean, how many forehands do you think he's hit in his life? Millions? I don't know. The number has to be crazy. That, one of the best all time tennis players. How many forehands that they've hit? It's got to be crazy. So, in the very beginning when he was first playing golf, it would have probably been very difficult to get him to like change what he's doing, even though he may not have played any or much golf before, just because he played another sport with a very ingrained motion that he's translating to golf. So just thought I would add that in there. But looks like we got one more question here, and then we'll probably wrap up after that. All right. So Don says, I have an equipment question. I'll do my best to answer. Equipment really isn't my my expertise. Not as big of a club guy, more in like the golf instruction swing side, but I'll do my best to answer your question here. It says, should I have a wedge that is between my A wedge and my sand wedge so that I don't put myself in an awkward yardage? If so, should I get a loft that is right between the A wedge and the sand wedge? I generally I would recommend it. Typically, that's how most people build their bags, so that way they don't have big gaps in between. But it really just depends. Like, you may be in a situation where you want to have more woods in hybrids, and because you're going to use those a lot more than a wedge, right? So it's not. So me personally, I got a 58 degree, I got a 54 degree, I have a 50 degree, and I have a pitching wedge, right? I carry a driver, a 3-wood, and like a 3 hybrid, and then 4 through pitching wedge, right? So that's my bag, right? So, if I wanted to have like a 5-wood, I would probably get rid of one of those wedges, right? So, or I might get rid of the 3-wood and have a 5-wood or something like that. So I will tell you, the main way to know, like if you want to know throughout your bag what you need to have to get gap, make sure you don't have big gaps in your bag. That's going to be done through a really good professional fitting. So that's what I would highly recommend if you want to make sure that you don't have any big yardage gaps in your bag. Outside, not everyone's interested in doing that, and I completely understand. It kind of puts you out a little bit. You got to devote quite a bit of time to doing that. So you can certainly, test it out, right? So I don't know what your bag makeup looks like. I don't know if you're going to have to take a club out to add this club in, right? So I would just play around with it and see what it is and see what it does for you. I will tell you right now, I have a 50 degree wedge. I don't really hit it that much. I basically hit it when I have anywhere from like 100 to 125. Might be a couple times around I might hit it, sometimes never. I would say of all my wedges, it's probably the wedge that I hit the least, just because I just don't have a ton of shots at that number. 100 and under, I'm hitting 54 usually. Within 30 yards of the green, I'm usually hitting my 58. I can hit that 50 degree farther than 125, but I would rather just choke up on a pitching wedge and just kind of keep it lower and have a little bit more control of it. Typically pitching wedge is like a 140 club for me. So I can choke down on it, and kind of take like an easier swing, just hit like an easy choked up club, and that's going to give me that 125 number. So that's what I do. But everybody's a little bit different. So test it out. I would say generally, yeah, you would, but I don't know what you're going to have to take out, right, to make that work. So that club that you may need to take out, it might be more important to you playing better golf than the 50 degree. So either what I'd recommend is getting professionally fitted to kind of make sure that everything's kind of covered and you don't have any gaps, or what I would recommend doing is just test it. Get yourself a wedge, take whatever club out, and you might test taking out different clubs too. And the other thing is, yes, it's a 14 club rule, but if you're not, if you just play recreationally, you don't even really necessarily play to a handicap or anything like that. You just go out and have fun. Have 50 clubs. Might make your bag a little heavy, but who cares? You're just going out there for fun. Now, if you play to a handicap and you play in tournaments and stuff, yeah, you got to do the 14 clubs. But if you're just playing recreational with your buddies and stuff like that, then who cares? Have as many clubs as you want and have fun with it. Right. We'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks, everyone, for joining me. We'll be back here Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time.